Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
What you'll hear are adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And These Are Your Stories. So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. One more thing. You just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by a taradiddle. This word references someone or something that is filled with pretentious nonsense.
Oh, I see.
Can you give an example?
Yes, I can. The best example that I can provide is the story that you're about to hear.
Can't wait.
Police headquarters, Inspector Harris speaking.
Inspector Harris, this is Peter Arnold.
Yeah, what can I do for you?
Inspector Harris, I think I'm going to be murdered.
What?
Just a minute ago, I received an anonymous letter threatening my life.
Have you any idea who it's from?
No.
Where are you now?
I'm at my office in the Acme building, 10th floor.
I'll be right over. Stay right where you are.
Oh, yes, Inspector. Only hurry.
Here's the place, Chief. The Acme building.
Okay.
Hope we're not too late.
Well, if we hurry, we can...
What's the matter, Chief?
Yeah. On the street, little pieces of glass.
Glass? Where'd that come from?
I don't know.
Hey, Chief. Look up there. See that broken window?
That's Arnold's office. Come on, Stacy. Something's wrong up there. What's happened up here?
Who are you?
We're the police. I'm Inspector Harris, and this is my assistant, Joe Stacy.
Oh, am I glad you've come. I'm Lois Cranston, Mr. Arnold's secretary.
Yeah?
Something terrible's happened. Mr. Arnold locked himself in this office.
Yes?
And just a minute ago, I heard a shot and then glass breaking.
Come on, Stacy. Help me break down this door.
Okay.
All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3. There.
Holy Moses. Look, Chief.
Is anything wrong? And Mr. Arnold.
Will you look at that? A bullet hole right through his head.
And the window's broken. The murderer must have been standing on the roof of that building across the alleyway and fired through this window.
I'm afraid you're wrong.
What do you mean?
I mean that I'm arresting you, Miss Cranston, for the murder of Peter Arnold.
How does the inspector know that Miss Cranston murdered Peter Arnold? We'll give you the solution in just a moment. But first...
BG, what the heck are you doing?
Testing a theory I have about this murder.
Yeah, but you just broke my window.
Can't be helped. But look at the result.
Do you mean the glass everywhere?
Exactly. But it's where the glass is, or rather, where it's not.
I could really punch your face right now.
That's entirely understandable.
And now, back to our story.
Mr. Arnold was shot from outside. The broken glass proves it.
Oh, that's what you've tried to make us believe. No, Miss Cranston. You shot Peter Arnold from this very room, broke the window to make it look like the shooting was done from outside, and then went out and locked the door. It would have been a perfect murder, except for one thing.
What was that?
The broken window. You see, we found the fragments of glass on the street.
Well?
If the bullet had been fired from the outside, the fragments of glass would have gone in the direction of fire. In other words, the glass would have landed inside the room, not on the street. No, Miss Cranston, you murdered Peter Arnold. I don't know why you did it, but we'll soon get the story out of you at headquarters.
Well, I see where you were going with your glass test.
I needed to prove my point.
And you couldn't just tell me your idea?
That would have lacked finesse.
But it would have saved me a window.
What is a broken window in place of science?
About $300, which, by the way, you will pay for.
Oh, I must be going.
What's that you said?
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today, it's really all about Nightfall.
Nightfall? That's super lame.
No, it's not. I'm talking about the classic sci-fi story written by Isaac Asimov.
That could be good.
It is. We will hear about the origins of the story, some thoughts about it, and we will hear the radio adaptation of it from the OTR series, X-1.
Countdown for blast off. X-5, 4, 3, 2, X-1, fire.
It is going to be epic.
Is there anything else?
There is. We also have 2 brand new ghost stories from you guys.
That should just about do it.
I quite agree. I received this email from Joe Manners, who lives in Sitka, Alaska. Hey Ron, longtime listener, first time I've ever contacted you. This past week you had your 557th episode. How long did it take you to hit that number? Just curious. Joe. Well, Joe, first, let me say that you are the first person to write in from Alaska. That's pretty neat. It has taken just over 11 years to get to that number. The first podcast went out in April of 2011. How about that? Just a quick reminder that I am looking for your scary stories. The month of spooky is nearly here, and I'm short stories for the month. So, if you have one, we want to hear it. Now, let's get to the show. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Audible has sponsored the show now since July of 2019. We have reviewed more than 140 audiobooks, and the list keeps growing. Did you know that Audible has over 200,000 books available? And a lot of those are included in the free catalog. Audible is amazing, and it is the perfect companion to Ron's Amazing Stories. If you like this podcast, you're going to love Audible. So what am I listening to? Nightfall and Other Stories by Isaac Asimov. This is a collection of 20 classic stories written by Isaac Asimov. It includes what is considered to be his best story, the definitive version of Nightfall. This is a tale of a world that is suddenly plunged into total darkness and utter madness. Written on March 17, 1941, and sold on April 24th. The short story was published in the September 1941 issue of Astounding Science Fiction under editor John W. Campbell. It was the 32nd story written by Asimov, written while he was a graduate student in chemistry at Columbia University. Campbell asked Asimov to write a story after discussing with him a quotation from Ralph Waldo Emerson, which is, "If stars should appear one night in 1,000 years, how would men believe and adore, and preserve for many generations the remembrance of the city of God?" Here's the preface for the book, written by Isaac and read for us by John Lindstrom.
First appearance, Astounding Science Fiction, September 1941. Copyright 1941 by Street and Smith Publications, Inc. Copyright renewed 1968 by Isaac Asimov. The writing of Nightfall was a watershed in my professional career. When I wrote it, I had just turned 21. I had been writing professionally, in the sense that I was submitting my stories to magazines and occasionally selling them, for 2.5 years, but had created no tidal wave. I had published about a dozen stories and had failed to sell a dozen others. Then, John W. Campbell, Jr., the editor of Astounding Science Fiction, showed me the Emerson quotation that starts Nightfall. We discussed it. Then I went home and, over the course of the next few weeks, wrote the story. Now let's get something straight. I didn't write that story any differently from the way I had written my earlier stories, or, for that matter, from the way I wrote my later stories. As far as writing is concerned, I am a complete and utter primitive. I have no formal training at all, and to this day I don't know how to write. I just write any old way it comes into my mind to write, and just as fast as it comes into my mind. And that's the way I wrote Nightfall. Mr. Campbell never sends letters of acceptance. He sends checks instead, and very promptly, and that is an excellent way of handling the matter. I always found it thrilling. I received a check for Nightfall, but my initial pang of delight was almost instantly snuffed out by the fact that Mr. Campbell had made a mistake. Standard payment at that time was a munificent 1 cent a word. No complaints, folks. I was glad to get it. The story was 12,000 words long, and therefore I expected $120, but the check was for $150. I groaned. It would be so simple to cash the check and ask no questions. But the 10 Commandments, as preached to me by my stern and rock-bound father, made it absolutely necessary to call Mr. Campbell at once and make arrangements for a new and smaller check. It turned out there was no mistake. The story seemed so good to Mr. Campbell that he gave me a bonus of 1/4 cent a word. I had never, till then, received so huge a payment for any story, and that was just the beginning. When the story appeared, it was given the lead position and the cover. What's more, I was suddenly taken seriously, and the world of science fiction became aware that I existed. As the years passed, in fact, it became evident that I had written a classic. It has appeared in 10 anthologies that I know of, including 1 British, 1 Dutch, 1 German, 1 Italian, and 1 Russian. I must say, though, that as time passed, I began to feel some irritation at being told over and over again that Nightfall was my best story. It seemed to me, after all, that although I know no more about writing now than I knew then, sheer practice should have made me more proficient, technically, with each year. The thing has preyed on my mind, in fact, until the idea of this book came to me. I have never included Nightfall in any of my own collections of stories because it always seemed to me to have been so well anthologized that it must be familiar to all my readers. Yet perhaps that's not so. Most of my readers weren't even born when the story first appeared, and perhaps many of them haven't seen the anthologies. Besides, if it's my best story, then I want it in one of my own collections. I can also include other stories of mine that have proven successful in one way or another, but have not appeared in any of my own collections. So, with Doubleday's kind permission, I have prepared Nightfall and other stories, with all the tales in the order of publication. Nightfall itself is the first, and now you can see for yourself how my writing has developed, or has failed to develop, with the years. Then you can decide for yourself why, or if, Nightfall is better than the others. I don't know enough about writing to be able to tell.
As I said, there are a total of 20 stories in this book. They are arranged in order of publication from 1941 to 1967. It was compiled by Asimov himself. What makes this audiobook so special is that he introduces each story. It begins with Nightfall, which is arguably Asimov's breakout work, making such an impression that almost 30 years later, the Science Fiction Writers of America voted it the best science fiction short story ever written. Other stories in the collection span far and wide. Machines that learn to think for themselves and direct their thoughts to overturning the establishment. The discovery that Earthlings are being destroyed by a mysterious kind of psychological virus. A day when walking outdoors becomes a sign of psychosis. And many, many more. 20 stories, each riveting, each a classic. Now, if that appeals to you, head to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you can have Nightfall and other stories for free. Here's what Audible has set up for us. They are offering a free audiobook and 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out their service. This also grants access to the included catalog, which is updated constantly with new titles. So, to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Thank you, Audible. And now, it's time for your stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
Our first story comes from the wild state of Nevada. Samantha Grimm sent this one in from Las Vegas and has titled it Ghost in the Pool. First off, I didn't really see it in the pool. It was afterwards, after my sister accidentally kicked me in the eye while in the pool. I decided to pull a prank on her and pretend that she had gave me a bruised eye. So I grabbed my mother's makeup palette and did the best I could to fake a black eye, and it seemed believable. I walked upstairs to the loft to where my sister and her friends were hanging out and showed her my eye. She obviously freaked out. I made her apologize before she wiped my eye and realized it was makeup. She punched me and we had a good laugh. I went downstairs to the bathroom to wash it off. As I bent over to wash my eye, in my peripheral vision I saw a small, frail boy wearing a striped shirt and boarding shorts. He had a bowl cut and was glaring at me with distorted facial features. Knowing that there were no children this young at the party, I immediately stood up, straightened up, and looked towards him. He was gone. I backed up into the corner of the bathroom and looked around the room. My heart was beating out of my chest. I ran out of the room and told my sister. After a few months had passed, I had completely forgotten about the event, and so had my sister. One evening I went to my parents' room to get a shirt that I had left there from the previous night. My parents' room and the bathroom are connected by a pair of double doors with frosted glass, just like most of the doors in our house. I found my shirt and was on my way out when I noticed 2 small handprints on one of those frosted panes. I stopped myself to have a better look at it. Each handprint was small as a child's hands. I felt shocked, but then I got shivers on every inch of my body as I remembered what had happened after that pool party not too long ago. My heart sank, and I ran to the kitchen to get some cleaning supplies and desperately tried to wipe it off. But it didn't come off at all. In fact, it made it somewhat clearer. I decided to ignore it, but it's currently still there. It creeps me out whenever I go to my parents' room, or especially the bathroom. Samantha Grimm, Las Vegas. Well, that is a story that makes you say, huh. I'm not sure what you saw, but I will say it's not normal. it's paranormal. Thank you, Sam, for sharing your story. This story comes from Oliver Marshall, who lives in Louisville, Kentucky. He has titled his story, The Night at Iroquois Park. Hey, Ron. Loved the podcast and heard you wanted some stories. I've wanted to send some in for a while, but I guess now's the time. My buddies and I go to places where urban legends and ghost stories reside. We hang out and record what we find. The hope is to have a good YouTube channel someday. We live in the Louisville area, so we recently hit up some of the major spots and decided to end it off with a trip to Iroquois Park. Now, we know all the stories, the headless woman who's supposed to appear on foggy nights, and the serial killer who ended his victims' lives there. So we pull up to the park late one night with our film and lighting equipment. We're walking on the closed road in the park, and right away we could tell that the real danger in coming here at night is the pure isolation you have on the top of the hill. While it's supposed to be a beautiful nighttime view, any Louisvillian will tell you not to go there at night. We get to the top of the hill after walking about an hour, and it's apparent that my buddies are as sketched out as I am, so we decided to do a full lap before we set up. We're about halfway through, having already heard dogs barking, seen the fog, and even smelled some burning wood. We stumble upon a point where there's a large stone wall. In the dark, it looks to us like there's a figure sitting on that wall, swaying back and forth, but much taller than your average person. I immediately get freaked out and say, on camera, I see somebody on the wall. We turn off our lights and sit for a second, trying to work out what the figure is in the dark. I start to turn around thinking, hey, this is a homeless person up to no good, but my friend decides to approach it. By the time we get to where the thing is sitting, there's nothing there. Scared the crap out of me. I'm not sure how scared my buddies were because I couldn't see their faces in the dark, but I am sure it got our hearts pumping. We do have video of this, so if you're interested, let me know. Oliver Marshall, Louisville, Kentucky. Well, Oliver, I'm not only interested, I want to see that video. Also, I decided to do a bit of research. Iroquois Park is a 739-acre park in Louisville, Kentucky. It was designed by Frederick Law Cherokee and Shawnee Parks at what was then the edge of the city. Located south of downtown, Iroquois Park was promoted to Louisville's version of Yellowstone, being incorporated in 1888. The park's most prominent feature is the scenic viewpoint atop the hill, known to many as Lookout Point. As you hike the park's winding trails on a serene, crisp night, you might start to notice the sound of a dog barking wildly. Then a thick fog will roll in from nowhere, partially obstructing your vision. It's then you smell it. The stench of smoke and fire begins to rise in the air. The fog breaks momentarily, and you notice a figure approaching you. By most accounts, she appears dressed in early 1800s settlement clothes, and as she walks through the park, you can see her holding her head in her hands as blood drips from her severed neck. Yikes. This tale has been passed on for years from one generation to the next. It's said that she's often seen very close to Lookout Point. She is the ghost of a farmer's wife who settled with her husband in the area where the park is now located. As the story goes, one night while her husband was gone, bandits attempted to sneak up on the homestead to ransack it. They first silenced the family dog, then rushed into the house and caught the woman unawares. Grabbing her as she screamed, they beheaded her and left her for dead. They promptly set fire to the house in an attempt to cover up what they had done. Now, is the headless ghost that very woman? Is she seeking justice? I wouldn't know. However, I don't recommend taking a late-night stroll through Iroquois Park. Well, that's what we have for this time. If you have a story that you want to share, like Oliver did, head to the main website at ronsamazingstories.com. Click on the story submission banner, leave your story, give it a title, and please tell me where you're from. I'll read it if I can. Our featured story for this time comes from our featured audiobook. It is the radio adaptation of Isaac Asimov's Nightfall. When you're listening to old-time radio, it can be problematic. Things have changed and the way we tell stories has changed as well. However, sometimes the storytellers of 70 years ago got it right. That is the case for Nightfall. As I mentioned in our Audible segment, this story is considered to be one of the best ever. What do you say we find out? This one comes from the series X-1 and truly does fire on all cylinders. But why? The answer is simple. The tale takes place on a planet where the conditions are very different from those here on Earth. In this one, we're forced to imagine what life would be like with no night. Now on Earth, there are no places like that. However, if you're at the North or South Pole, you can sort of experience it. But can you imagine a world with no night at all? Then imagine the chaos that would ensue if suddenly the lights went out and you saw the stars for the very first time. That's what happens in Nightfall. It first aired on X-1 in December of 1955.
Countdown for blast off. X-5, 4, 3, 2, X-1, fire. From the far horizons of the unknown come transcribed tales of new dimensions in time and space. These are stories of the future, adventures in which you'll live in 1,000,000 could-be years on 1,000 maybe worlds. The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with Street and Smith, publishers of astounding science fiction, presents
X minus 1.
Tonight's story, Nightfall by Isaac Asimov.
Ralph Waldo Emerson speculated, if the stars should appear one night in 1,000 years, how would man believe and adore and perceive for many generations the remembrance of the city of God? This was philosophically interesting. But on the edge of the galaxy, a planet swings on its orbit in a cluster of 6 suns. These suns hang in the sky above. Never less than 2 shine down through the entire 23.8 hours of the planet's day. The yellow light has burned down on the planet continuously, into the past, till the mind of man runneth not to the contrary. Theremin was a reporter for the Sarrow City Chronicle. He covered them all, from the night police beat to politics to the sports pages, and the city editor wanted him to cover the biggest story of the year, perhaps of all time. It was an interview, a particularly difficult interview, But then, since his first days as a cub, Theremin had specialized in difficult interviews. It cost him bruises, black eyes, and broken bones, but it had gotten him an ample supply of coolness and self-confidence. He didn't expect violence, though, from an astronomer.
You're from that newspaper? Well, you got a lot of gall coming here.
Well, now, look, Dr. Aton, it's only a job.
I've read your paper. You've been writing this observatory for 2 months now. You've attacked me personally. I have nothing to say to you.
Well, this is your chance to get your side into the paper. Look, Dr. Aton, I'll give it to you straight. 2 months ago, the observatory issued a press statement that the world was coming to an end. Now, that's the same story the cult of the Book of Revelations had been preaching. Now, when a scientist backs that up, it's news.
Our conclusions have nothing to do with the cult. The cult is full of superstition and mysticism. We're scientists.
You've got the people pretty angry.
It doesn't matter.
If I can't get the story from you, I'll have to go somewhere else.
Go ahead.
The paper can be pretty rough on someone who doesn't cooperate, Dr. Aton.
Young man, if you're not out of the observatory within 5 minutes, I shall call the police. Now get out.
The reporter walks down the long hall from the observatory. The light filters through the high, clear-story windows. The yellow light of Gamma, the brightest of the 6 suns in the planet's sky. Beta is almost at zenith. Its red light floods the landscape to an unusual orange. The planet sun Alpha is at the antipodes, and now as Gamma sinks below the horizon, the red dwarf sun Beta is alone, grimly alone. It's a short drive from the observatory to Cerro City, and the red light glares from the highway. The temple of the cult stands hewn from the solid rock of the Dormite Mountains outside the city, and in the inner courtyard stands Sor, the priest of the cult.
Woe to the unbelievers! Their souls will rot with the absence of light.
Tell me, Your Reverence, what will happen? What are you waiting for here?
The day of the coming. It is written in the Book of Revelations. It came to pass the sun Beta was alone in the sky, and the world was shrunken and cold. And men did assemble in the public squares and highways. Their minds were troubled, and their speech confused. But the souls of men awaited the coming of the stars. And the lip of the cave of darkness passed the edge of Beta, and loud were the cries of men, and there was no light on the surface of the world. And in this blackness there appeared the stars in countless numbers, and in that moment the souls of men departed from them, and their abandoned bodies became even as beasts. From the stars then reached down the heavens flame, and where it touched, the cities of the world flamed to destruction, so that of man and all the works of man naught remained. So it is written.
Dr. Sharon, you're the only scientist I could find in the city. Where is everybody?
In the hideout.
The hideout?
Yes, but the place bored me. I wanted to be out here where things are getting hot. I want to see the stars the cultists are talking about. Besides, they don't want me at the hideout. I'm too scrawny to survive.
What is the hideout?
Well, we professors have managed to convince a few people that our prophecy of doom is valid. We've got about 3,000 people. They're supposed to hide where the darkness and the stars can't get at them. We hope they'll survive and leave the records.
Survive? Survive what?
Well, how true it is, I can't say, but the cultists say that every 2,050 years all the suns disappear, and there is a total darkness, and then they say things called stars appear. Of course, men go mad. They mix all this up with a lot of religio-mystic notions, but that's the central idea.
But that's impossible, isn't it? I mean, there are always at least 2 suns in the sky, most of the time 4 or 5.
There aren't now. Only Beta.
You mean that there is going to be worldwide darkness tomorrow, that all mankind will go violently insane? What's behind that?
Well, for one thing, the history of civilization of the world. We have located a series of cycles of civilizations comparable to our own, all of which, without exception, were destroyed by fire at the very height of their culture.
But is there any scientific theory behind this which would explain it?
Well, the University Observatory finished their calculations 2 months ago. And tomorrow there will be an eclipse of Beta so that the planet will become dark. That eclipse comes every 2,049 years. Darkness. And maybe those mysterious stars that no man has seen. And then madness and the end of civilization.
And you expect to live through this at the hideout?
They plan to photograph the eclipse and leave the records. And then the rest of mankind will know what to expect.
Well, what is there in darkness to drive men mad?
Have you ever experienced darkness, young man?
Well, no, but I know what it is. It's just no light.
Oh. Draw the curtain.
Why, what for? If we had 4 or 5 suns out there, we might want to cut the light down for comfort, but with only Beta...
Ah, that's the point. Just draw the curtain and then come here and sit down.
All right. I can't see you.
Feel your way.
But I can't see you. I can't see anything.
Do you like it?
Oh, it's awful. The walls seem to be closing in on me. I keep wanting to push them away.
All right. Draw the curtain back again.
Oh, the light. Do you have a drink?
Right here. Now, that was just a dark room.
Yes, but it wasn't really so bad.
You're afraid?
Just darkness could do that?
This isn't just a metaphysical theory, young man. It's promulgated from observed data. Well, come with me.
Where?
The locked wall down the corridor. Were you at the Cerro City Centennial Exposition 2 years ago?
I was overseas on assignment.
Well, you remember hearing about the tunnel of mystery that broke all records in the amusement area?
Oh, yes. Wasn't there some fuss about that? The Anti-Vice Society had it shut down.
Oh, it was shut down, all right. But the Blue Noses had nothing to do with it. That tunnel was nothing but a mile-long passage through darkness. You rode in a little car, and it took 15 minutes to get through. Oh, it was very popular while it lasted.
Popular?
Well, there's a fascination to be frightened when it's part of a game. Absence of light is one of the instinctive human fears. People came out of that 15 minutes of darkness shaking and half dead with fear.
Weren't there some deaths?
Oh, bad hearts, but that wasn't the big danger. Now, which key is this? Ah.
Where are we going?
You'll see. No, the heart attacks were actually good for business, but there was something else. Here, I'll show you. I want you to see somebody. Latimer.
Go away.
Latimer, I want you to meet somebody. This is Mr. Theremin.
No, go away.
Hello?
He's pushing me. Make him stop pushing me. Go away.
I'm not touching him. What's wrong?
Latimer is afraid. Aren't you?
The walls. They're falling in on me. The walls. I've got to get out. Let me out.
You can't go out, Latimer. It's all right.
I've got to get out. Let me out. Let me out.
At sleeping period, we have to give him a shot of morphine. Otherwise, he'd bat his brains against the wall.
What's wrong with him?
Nothing. Nothing but 15 minutes in the darkness of the tunnel of mystery.
Oh, that's impossible.
1 person out of 10 came out of the tunnel that way. That's why we had it shut down.
But why should darkness do that?
It's obvious men cannot exist without light. Longer periods of darkness would obviously be fatal. The scientific theory is that the consciousness of light is necessary for mental activity.
Please, doctor, let me outside. Let Let me out, please. I can't breathe. They're pushing me. They're always pushing me. I can't stand here.
Well, there you are, Theremin. That's what 15 minutes of darkness will do. Man just wasn't built to operate without light. There are always at least 2 suns in the sky, most of the time more.
Just 15 minutes of darkness.
Now, look out of that window. Imagine darkness everywhere. No light as far as you can see. Black. Everything black. And, stars, whatever they are. Can you conceive it? No, your mind wasn't built for that conception. When the real thing comes, you will go mad. Completely and permanently. There is no question of it. Tomorrow, there won't be a city left standing in the world.
Why should the cities be destroyed?
If you were in darkness, what would you want more than anything else? What would it be that every instinct would call for? Light. And how would you get light?
I don't know.
You'd burn something. They've got to have light. They've got to burn something. And every city in the world will go up in flames. Well, shall we go back to my office, Mr. Theremin, and have another drink?
Through the skies, the red sun Beta shines alone. The wind howls across the city. It is cold, colder than man can remember. And as the hour approaches, the reporter goes out and speaks to the man in the street.
Excuse me, where are you going now?
Home for supper.
How about, what are you going to do tonight?
Oh, you mean about this star stuff? Look, I'll tell you, mister, I got nothing against religion, see? But it don't stand to reason that the end of the world is going to come boom like that. It just don't stand to reason.
Have you read what the scientists say?
I don't read stuff like that, only the headlines.
Well, how about the cult?
Well, now, like I say, I've got nothing against religion.
But you don't believe them either.
They've always been shouting about doom and sin. Listen, when you've been around as long as I have, you get to know the score. It's all right to preach Judgment Day is coming and all that, but just the same, I'm putting money in the bank.
How about darkness?
About what?
How would you feel if there were no light?
You crazy. How could there be no light?
Well, suppose all the suns went down at once. Suppose everything was black.
That's crazy. What's the use of supposing something like that? It couldn't happen. It's crazy.
That's all. Thank you.
Sure. Oh, look, mister, remember, pallet with 2 L's?
All this talk of scientific explanation, it's sinful, that's what it is.
Are you a member of the cult, sir?
Sure I am. Been a member since I was a boy. My daddy was a member, too. I've seen the books. It's all written down in the books.
Don't you believe the scientists' explanation?
Don't need it. I'm going to save my immortal soul. I'm going to stay on the mountaintop in a white robe while the stars carry me away to glory. Blessed be the stars. Amen.
What are the stars?
The glory, the breath of the heavens, the spirit of the ultimate. That's what they are.
The observatory has announced that it intends to take pictures of the stars.
Blasphemy. I sold my house and gave all my money to the poor. Won't need it anymore. I'm going to heaven with the stars. Glory, glory, going with the stars.
The reporter checks the stock exchange, the stores, business at a standstill. Doesn't pay to buy anything today, not if the world is going to end tomorrow. There are predictions of economic collapse in the financial section, layoffs at the factories on the edge of the city. And through the streets, the people will mill and turn, unsure, crying in fear or shouting with bravado. The story isn't here in the city. And so as the hour approaches, the reporter goes again to the observatory, high in the hills.
Look, Dr. Aton, if you are right, if the world is going to be destroyed, what is the difference if I stay here and observe and take notes?
Nothing, I suppose. You will be in the way. We have work to do.
If I stay out of the way.
Hello. Oh, this place is like a morgue. It's freezing outside. The wind is enough to hang icicles on your nose. Beta doesn't seem to give any heat at all, the distance it is.
Why aren't you in the hideout, Sharon?
Me? I'm part of the race that isn't worth perpetuating. Who's got a bottle?
There'll be no alcohol today. Be too easy to get my men drunk. I can't afford to tempt them. All right, Thurman, you can stay. The time we took our positions, the observatory dome is up these stairs.
After you. Ah! What is that?
Up in the dome, quick!
What is it?
It's the plates. The photographic plates, they're all smashed.
There he is. A cultist.
He's going for the telescope. After him.
All right, I've got him. Let go. No. Let go. Must be destroyed. It must be.
It's all right. He didn't harm anything. Let him up.
Well, that's the high priest. I was talking to him yesterday.
All right. What do you want?
Nothing that you would give me of your own free will.
I made a bargain with the cult to give me certain data that you had. In return, I promised to prove the essential truth of the creed.
There was no need to prove that. It stands proven by the book of Revelations.
I offered scientific backing for you believers.
You made of the darkness and the stars a natural phenomenon and removed all its real significance. That was blasphemy.
The facts exist.
Your facts are a fraud and a delusion.
How do you know?
I know.
I suppose you think in trying to warn the world against the menace of madness, we are placing souls in jeopardy, huh? Well, we haven't succeeded, if that makes you feel better.
Your devilish instruments must be destroyed. We obey the will of the stars.
Someone call the police in Cerro City.
There's no time for that. Let me handle this. The eclipse is only a few minutes away. Look, you. Will you give your word of honor to cause no trouble?
I will not.
Listen. Just as soon as the eclipse starts, we're going to take you and put you in a closet with the door closed, and you will stay there. Then you won't see the darkness, and you won't see the stars. And that means the loss of your immortal soul, according to the cult. All right. Will you give your word of honor?
You have it. You will all be damned for your deeds of today.
Look at Beta.
The eclipse has started. You can see the blackness against Beta. Get busy on those cameras. Check the exposures very carefully.
You're shaking, Mr. Ferriman.
Yes, I don't feel very well.
You're not losing your nerve.
No, I'm just not used to it.
You could probably make the hideout.
I have been assigned to cover a story. I intend to cover it.
Oh, professional honor?
Yes.
Yes. Allah sofanet radrak. Allah sofanet.
What is that?
The cultist. That's the book of Revelations.
I don't understand it.
He is chanting some old cycle language. The book of Revelations was originally written in it. There are probably 2 million people in Cerro City who are trying to join the cult. One gigantic revival.
How do the cultists manage to keep the book of Revelations going from cycle to cycle if everyone goes mad? Who wrote the book?
There are some people who don't see the stars. The blind, those who drink themselves into a stupor, and children, to whom the world as a whole is too new and too strange for them to be frightened at stars and darkness. They would have memories, and that, combined with the confused, incoherent babbling of the mad, formed the basis for the book of Revelations. Oh, the cult will be riding high down there in the city. I hope they make the most of it.
Dr. Sharon, I just heard from the hideout on the private line.
Oh, they're in trouble?
They are safe, but the city is a shambles. You have no idea.
Well, it'll get worse. But what are you shaking about, Dr. Ayton? How do you feel?
You don't understand. The cultists are rousing the people to storm the observatory, promising them immediate entrance into grace, promising them salvation, promising them anything.
How long till the total eclipse?
An hour.
Well, it's a gamble. It will take time to get a mob out here. If the darkness comes first, we're all right. Oh, look at Beta.
It's cut in half. Half of it is black.
Yes, it's getting darker. An interesting phenomenon. Oh, my collar is suddenly tight. Are you having any difficulty in breathing?
No, why?
Difficulty in breathing is one of the first symptoms. We have experimented.
I'm cold. It seems to be getting colder.
Yes, well, we'd better keep our minds on something else. One of the astronomers has a theory about the stars, far away to see in the light. He developed a fantasy about a planet revolving around one sun. It's a mathematical possibility. Of course, there couldn't be any life. Part of the planet would always be dark and without light. Well, it's obvious. Without light, there can't be any life.
It's time for the artificial light. We can't read the instruments.
Artificial light?
One of the researchers at the university worked it out.
Why, it's beautiful. Yellow light. After 4 hours of red. It's beautiful. Light. Light.
The dome is quiet. The priest in his yellow robe sways slowly as his lips move in the ancient tongue. Over and over, he whispers the invocation to the stars. The technicians hunch over the instruments, and the sky gradually turns a horrible deep purple red, and the air grows denser. Dusk, like a palpable entity, enters the room, and the dancing circle of yellow light about the torches etches itself into ever sharper distinction against the ever-gathering grayness beyond. Outside, Beta is a mere smoldering splendor, taking a last look at the world. The western horizon, in the direction of the city, is lost in darkness, and along the highway to the observatory surges a menacing, shadowy mass.
The mob from the city, they're coming.
How long till total eclipse?
15 minutes. But they'll be here in 5.
We'll hold them off. Come on, Fetterman, downstairs.
But there's no light down there.
We have to block the door. Come on.
I can't breathe. I can't go down there.
Take a torch. We'll take light with us. Come on. Aiton?
I'm here. Did you bar the door?
They won't get in.
All right, now, everybody. 1 minute till totality. 1 minute. Just before totality, I'm changing the plate. That will leave one of you for each camera. You know all about times of exposure. Now remember, don't try to look for good shots. And if you feel yourself going, get away from the camera.
It's dark. It's getting dark.
Sharon, where are you? I can't see you, Sharon.
I'm right here.
30 seconds.
Look out. The priest.
I can't see him.
And the wicked shall perish, and the souls of the true believers shall be transported in glory to the stars.
You can see him against the torch.
Don't let him get to the telescope.
From the stars there reached down a heavenly flame, and where it touched the cities of the world, flame to utter destruction.
Grab him!
You shall not blaspheme! The world must be destroyed by the stars! It must be! Let me go!
I'll take care of him.
The stars! The stars!
5 seconds to totality. 4, 3, 2, 1.
The sky is black, and through it shine the stars. 30,000 minute suns shine down in a soul-searing splendor. It is more frightening in its awful indifference than the bitter wind that shivers across the horrible, cold, bleak world.
The stars. The stars. The stars.
Oh, no!
It's dark. 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 The walls. The walls are coming in on me. They're coming in. Light. 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 Darkness. Forever.
Light.
And ever. And ever.
Light.
And the walls are breaking in. We did not know. We did not know. We did not know.
On the horizon, in the direction of the city, a crimson glow begins growing. 1,000 fires strengthen in brightness that is not the glow of the sun. 1,000,000 fires, as a world mad in the darkness screams in terror for the light. The night has come again.
You have just heard X-1, presented by the National Broadcasting Company in cooperation with Street and Smith, publishers of astounding science fiction. Tonight, by transcription, X-1 has brought you Nightfall by Isaac Asimov, adapted for radio by Ernest Kenoy. Featured in the cast were Wendell Holmes, John Larkin, Santos Ortega, Mercer McLeod, Alan Collins, Bob Hastings, and Roy Fent. Your narrator was Floyd Mack. Fred Collins speaking. X-1 was directed by Daniel Sutter and is an NBC Radio Network production.
What a story. And that one has to be one of my favorites from the golden age of radio. Fascinating concept, and one that I personally can understand. As a kid, I always needed to have my door open or some type of nightlight. Total darkness scared me, and I remember wondering what was out there just out of reach. Today, I love the dark, and I consider it to be a welcome reprieve from the day's activities. I can close my eyes knowing that the sun will return in the morning. Something to think about, don't you think? If the stars should appear one night in 1,000 years, how would men believe and adore and preserve for many generations the remembrance of the city of God? My thanks to Ralph Waldo Emerson. I hope you enjoyed this one. I personally loved it.
This is the year of the lark. The lark is the car of the year. Look what's new for you from the lark. It's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. It's a new convertible, seats 5 adults in style. It's so pert and perky, runs on pennies per mile.
The Lark by Studebaker, yours in 6 stunning styles for $60, including the new convertible and...
Look what else is new for you. It's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. It's a new Lark wagon with 4 convenient doors, and it's style for fun and frolic, but it's built for chores.
Look at the Lark yourself. Learn how it's been proven by 750 million miles of owner use. Visit your Studebaker dealer and see how nothing has been spared to build quality into the Lark. Discover why it's the value car of the year.
The Lark is the car of the year.
Well, Joe, that was episode number 558, and these people made it happen. Joe Mathers, Samantha Grimm, and Oliver Marshall. You guys are the best, and I really do appreciate it. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button makes us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.